Welcome to the Laser Channel. I'm Greg, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the Jiccoda L1 10-watt laser machine. Stay tuned to find everything out about this machine, including a quick sample project at the end of the video. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me today as I talk about this Jiccoda L1 laser machine. This unit, at the time of the release, already has an air assist kit available with the machine and a rotary roller unit and honeycombs. So I do have the air assist kit and I do have the roller kit, and I'll be doing another video in the short future with all of this on a project. And it does have the honeycomb available. The focused spot laser is 0.1 by 0.05 millimeters that will offer clean, crisp detail on your engravings while still having enough power to cut powerfully through your materials. This machine also has two really important built-in safety features. The first one is it does have a flame sensor on here. Should anything ever happen and you start a fire underneath the laser module, the machine will stop firing the laser and stop motion. The second feature is if this machine gets bumped, if it gets tilted 15 degrees or more, such as getting knocked off a table, the machine will stop moving, the laser will stop firing. This machine does have two connection methods, one of them being Bluetooth 5.0 that supports iOS and the Android app. It also includes a USB Type-C wired connection that supports Mac and Windows. But please note, you can't use the Bluetooth and the USB cable at the same time. This machine does have an app that allows you to run it from a mobile device. It can also be ran with the popular Laser Gerbil software that is free, or the small fee for LightBurn software. LightBurn software also offers a free 30-day trial that has all the features enabled in that software. And built into the laser guard, the orange shroud on the end of the laser, is a little leg that folds down that sets your focus. So the focusing tool is attached to the laser, which I really like. I have other lasers that have a standalone focusing device, and I pretty much have to put a lanyard on that and hook it around my neck to make sure that I don't lose it, because in my shop, while I keep it clean, it's very easy while I'm working on a project to set down the laser focusing tool and then have to search around on something that I set down just a minute before. Having that focusing tool built into the laser machine is very convenient. I put down in my notes here that Jiccoda has mentioned that the laser module lasts up to 10,000 hours in regular temperature. This is something that I read a lot about on Facebook and in the forums, is how long will the laser module run on these machines? And generally, you don't hear any spec on that. Jiccoda has committed that in normal operating temperatures, 10,000 hours is your number. The machine speed is 10,000 millimeters per minute. When you convert that over to millimeters per second, that's 166 roughly. My machines, I run them at a max speed of 160 millimeters per second. Personally, I find with my settings, if I start to exceed that, I can sometimes start to jump the belts in the machine, and that will throw the position off, which means my engraving on my work is now shifted by some amount, and it kind of ruins the project and I have to start over again. So 166 millimeters per second, very usable. Personally, I don't go any faster than 160. If your use differs from that, let me know in the comments down below. And lastly, there is a professional US technical team and support website to solve all of your technical problems. I'm going to see if I can't locate that and put that in the description down below. So enough talking about this thing. I want to get this thing cracked open, check it all out, assemble it for you guys, do a test project on it. This thing just arrived yesterday. It was supposed to be covered in my video next week, but there's a couple things I pushed off to the side so that I could get to this today, because the initial open box that I looked at this thing looks really nice. The price point on this that I'll get to in just a short amount of time is really attractive. So I want to get this information to you viewers, and with that, I'll start opening the box. The top side of this, I'm greeted by 2 pieces of heavy cardstock. I'm going to, without reading the instructions, I'm going to assume that's for some practice projects. I'm also greeted by the instruction manual. And then I have this special cutout form-fitted foam to keep all the components perfectly safe inside. And then I start having these boxes. So I'm going to start with this lightweight box. Again, I loosely looked at this, so we're kind of looking at this at the same time. So I've got the customary safety green. The next box that I have is the USB cable and a bag of screws for assembly, a brush for cleaning off debris, a screwdriver, a cleaner pen, stamped sheet metal wrench, and then there's a regular Allen wrench. Next up is the laser module itself. I like this. That's enclosed in a nice composite material that matches the rest of the color of the machine. When I look at the back, I can see the actual laser module itself is in this solid aluminum framework that acts as a heat sink, and it has a high velocity stack fan on the top to push cool air through all of the components inside that create heat. And the next box has the very exciting power supply. I'm going to tip this box up so that you can get a good view of just how well this is packaged in the foam. So far, all of the parts that I've taken out of this box have 0 marks or scratches on them. Nothing is damaged whatsoever. And here's the gantry crane that will hang on to the laser module itself. This is partially assembled with a belt already attached and tensioned. And underneath that piece of foam is the rest of the components. So here's one side rail. And the other side rail. The back of the machine. And this would be the front of the machine. And this front piece houses the controller board that controls the laser module and all of the motors for moving that laser module around. So a quick look at all these pieces and parts. It has this nice, I believe they call it periwinkle blue color to them. And there is not a mark anywhere on all of these pieces. So this came through shipping without a mark or a scratch on any of the components. And a little tip for you from my past experiences. If you find that you're struggling a little bit with the paper instructions, check out the SD card that comes with the machine to see if that has more current instructions on it. I think this machine will be fine, but I got caught the other week with a different manufacturer's machine that I was struggling using their assembly manual, only to find out when I installed the software off of the SD card that they had more up-to-date instructions on how to assemble the machine. And one of the questions that I typically field on these tabletop hobby-type laser machines are people ask the legitimate question of how easy this is and do you think that they could assemble this? My best pieces of advice are to watch videos like this. I'll streamline this putting together. I might just do a time lapse of that. The other is to make sure that you set some time aside uninterrupted time to put this together, along with just have a clean, clear workspace. I like to read through the manual on how to put it together first, go through that manual, get kind of an idea of how this all goes together. But first and foremost, I'm going to, off camera, take an inventory of all the pieces, primarily the fasteners that put all of this together. While I'm doing that, I can also familiarize myself the orientation of all these parts. I spent a few minutes off camera reviewing the manual that comes with the machine. It's actually a pretty nice manual. It's fully detailed, has a lot of pictures, which I really like. I did take a look at the SD card that was in the front control panel and put that in the included USB card reader and check that out. It does have all the manuals for everything, including an electronic copy of this manual. They both seem to be the same, so I like to have the paper copy in front of me and, if available, the computer running the electronic copy next to it. Everything's labeled very well. I laid out all the pieces and parts as they have shown in the manual. Each screw bag only contains one type and style of screw. So the screws in the bags, each bag has all the same screw in it. The framework is all bolted together. What I always recommend people when they go, how tight should the belts be? On a lot of these tabletop units, this upper assembly will typically have a belt installed and tensioned. So my recommendation is use how tight the belt is on this pre-assembled piece on any of the areas that you need to set the tension on the belts yet. Also, the really neat thing that all the fasteners, all the screws needed to assemble the frame are in one parts bag, and they're all clearly labeled in the instruction sheets in the paper manual. The next step in the manual is to make the electrical connections from the controller board out to the motors. The electrical connections are made fast and easy. The wiring harnesses lead right up to the motors. So there's no guesswork on where the connector goes. There's a motor here and a connector here from the wiring harness, and that's where it gets plugged into. And one tip that I have for you, before plugging these small connectors down to this little junction board that's on the bottom of the motor, mount this black switch up first. Otherwise, these cables here, the wires will get in the way of trying to install the fasteners. Another thing is these two switches, one is for this direction of the machine and the other switch is for this direction. So I recommend reading the little label that's on the colored wire. On this switch here, it has a label Y, and this other one has the label X. So this is the X direction, and this is the Y direction. And this is where I was talking about if you had these wires plugged in already, it would make it very difficult to get this limit switch installed. Installing the first screw, I'm going to leave it loose. Something that I found on my installation is there's this little jumper board that installs underneath this motor. I found in order to get the screw installed for the Y limit switch, I had to remove that board. With that board removed, however, this second screw goes in very easily. With that installed, I'm going to replace this little jumper board back onto the bottom of this stepper motor. And just so that you know, that little jumper board that I had off, it's only mechanically fastened to this motor. It does not have an electrical connection to that motor. That just happens to be an attachment point for this wiring harness for these two wires to essentially plug in together. With that lower limit switch installed, I'm going to plug in these two wires into that little jumper board. The first one is in, and the second one is now installed. With those two installed, I'm going to install this final jumper switch, this final limit switch. That second screw is in. I can snug those both up. And there's a lot going on in that small area, but just a little bit of time, patience, and orientating yourself with the owner's manual, the instruction manual, to kind of get your bearings of where everything goes. After a minute or two of studying the manual, it all makes sense. These limit switches are labeled X and Y. They are referenced to that in the manual as well. And lastly, my favorite part of putting these laser machines together is attaching the laser module itself to the frame of the machine. This one has a simple dovetail track that slides into this slot. I'll slide that down and see that this thumb screw is turned in quite a bit of the ways. I'm going to back that out so that this can slide down, and I'll just gently snug that back up. Nice tight fit and firmly attached. The very last connection is just this power wire going up to the laser module. With that final connection made, assembly of the machine is complete. But this actually only took a few minutes to put together. Most of the screws were used just for putting the ends of the frame together. There is a pulley on the inside that moves back and forth that pulls against the belt to loosen or tighten. That pulley needs to first be loosened up against the frame using this screw on the outside. This just needs to be loosened up just a little bit. This smaller Allen wrench fits through this access port to reach the screw that moves that tension pulley for the belt. So I'm going to use this Allen wrench as a pointer. Here's the pulley, and then here's the tension screw, and hopefully that's all being picked up by the camera. And I'm just going to tighten that up just a little bit, I can tighten this outside screw down. With a slight adjustment to that belt tension, the last thing that I want to check is that the limit switches are installed correctly. The red button that's on that limit switch is offset lower to one side than it did the other. And so what I'd like to do is just slowly push the laser module into that red laser bump and hear an audible click. And that one is in the correct position, and I could hear it activating the switch. Again, pushing the gantry forward slowly until it hits that limit switch, and I'll listen again for that audible click. So I had mentioned that pushing the gantry by hand slowly, you can move it. However, in normal operation, the controller board sends voltage out across the wiring harness to the motors to make the motors move back and forth. However, when I push the parts back and forth, turning the motors generate electricity and sends that back into the controller board. And if I push these too fast, I can risk over voltage to the controller board, causing damage to it. So just another little tip there. If you do move this by hand, just do it slow and controlled. A sharp, sudden jerk could damage your board. I think out of all the machines that I've assembled, this is one of the fastest and quickest assemblies. A couple of the key points that I found along the way is I do like the shaped metal that they have for these side rails. These are very solid. It has some weight to it. This is firmly attached to my table already, just on these rubber pads. With this coiled wire, it offers all the movement that the machine needs to do without focusing the stress on the wire, causing wire breakage or fraying. I don't think I've seen this on any other machine. I know on the X-Tool D1, I have one of the earlier models, and not to knock X-Tool, but that was one of the gripes that a lot of people, including myself, had, is their wiring harness is too short and did not offer proper strain relief. And there's a lot of broken wires going up to the laser module and to the motors out on the machine. However, on this machine, proper strain relief, and there's an attachment point of the end of that cable before the wire goes into any connector. So these connectors don't see any stress from the cable flexing while the machine is moving around. That's a really neat detail. That's really great, and it's not found on very many machines at all. This machine also features 3 drive motors, one for the X-axis to move the laser module back and forth, and 2 motors in the front for the Y-axis. So it's a dual motor drive system for the Y-axis. So on the next step, I'll be in the LightBurn software, connecting my computer up to the machine. Opening LightBurn, I'm going to turn my machine on, and I get the computer dinging that it found something on the USB network. I'm going to navigate over to Devices, clicking once on that. Click on Find My Laser, and this is going to scan for all new devices connected up to my computer. And it will hunt around for a minute or two, and it said that it found a machine that has a workbed of 404 millimeters by 404 millimeters. This is the only machine that I have hooked up to my machine. I'm going to add device. What would I like to call this? Jiccoda L1. And I would like my origin to be in the front left corner. That is when both limit switches are met at the same time. I'm going to disable auto home on laser startup. And as it states quite clearly, on the machine power up, the laser will automatically start homing. I don't want any movement on the machine unless I command movement on the machine, so I'm not caught off guard. I disable that, clicking next. It's just confirming everything. The Jiccoda L1 machine does have a work area of 16 inches by 16 inches. Origin at the front left corner. Click Finish. And I'm all set. Click OK. Navigating to the Devices area, clicking on this drop-down menu, you'll see I have multiple other machines that I can connect up to my LightBurn software. And this is one of the really neat features about the LightBurn software, is running multiple different machines from the same piece of software. Here I'm going to click on Jiccoda L1 machine. And just to make sure that I'm fully connected, I can put my mouse over Devices and right click, and that will refresh the connection. I can confirm this by navigating up to Console and seeing that yes, it is okay. And looking at the machine, I can start out by clicking the Home button, and I'll see already I've got motion on the machine. I'll go to that corner and it will disengage the limit switches and re-engage them and then disengage. That way it makes sure that it has a very accurate starting point. In the manual for this machine, this is why there was only one page needed for the LightBurn software. We clicked a couple buttons. The software automatically found the machine, knew all of the internal settings, the secret settings as I call them. It plugged all of those in, and we already have motion on the machine, and we're ready to do a test project. For this next part of the video, I'd like to show you a mini project where I both engrave and cut using the laser machine. I have a piece of leftover material from a previous project that I'm going to use for this quick sample. What I like to do for scoring my work up is I will take this board that is flat and just lower that down until I hit my work surface area. I'll then take my project material and push that up against that board, and with some light pressure on top of my project material, remove this straight board, and now I have a straight material in my work area. My best practice is always to secure my material down in my tool bed area. In some of the later videos, I'll be running an air assist kit on the laser machine itself, and those tend to blow a lot of air out, and that can kind of make that workpiece flutter and move around, making it look like the machine has an issue, when in fact really the project material is just moving around underneath the laser. And the tape I'm using is just regular standard blue painter's tape. I get roll after roll of this from my local Dollar Tree store. To protect my tabletop, I'm using the Jiccoda Honeycomb. Underneath this honeycomb is an aluminum backer board. With the project material secured in the workbed, I'm going to head back into LightBurn. In LightBurn, I drew up this quick little drawing here. I used the text tool to write Jiccoda, and then the rectangle tool to draw a box around the outside, and then this radius tool with the box selected. I clicked on each of the corners to round the nice corners out. It's a nice touch for any project. To make sure that the box and the text are perfectly aligned with one another, I select everything with the mouse control or hit Control A. Coming up to the top of the screen, this align both vertical and horizontal centers will take all the objects that are selected and center them perfectly. One last thing that I'd like to do before running this project is go over to the Edit and Device Settings. I want to make sure that Enable Laser Fire button is ticked green, along with Laser On when framing is ticked on. What that will do is when I navigate to the Move tab, I now have this fire button. I can click on that and make sure that I have some low power level, usually less than 1%, and that will fire the laser so I know where the starting position of the laser will be. Tab here, loosen that up a little bit and turn this focusing leg down, and this is fast and easy. Loosen the laser module until that leg rests gently on the workpiece. Snug up this thumb screw, turn that focusing leg back up, and as easy as that, the laser is now in focus. Everything looks good. I can click the preview button up at the top, and this will tell me the project will take about 2 minutes 46 seconds. I'll start this and probably do a time lapse so that you don't have to sit here for 2.5 minutes or so watching the laser do its work. Quick and easy mini project, and we'll lift this out of the tool bed area, and a perfect cutout. On the main camera, we'll see that that is a nice clean cutout. The engraving is nice and clean and crisp on it. With the honeycomb, there's very little smoke residue that came through on the back edge, and it cut through nice and clean with virtually no char left on the sides. It is darkened slightly, but we did laser cut through. So once again, this 10-watt laser from Jiccoda works very, very well. I'm pretty pleased and very impressed with it. That's a great little project to test out the capabilities of this laser machine. Couple final thoughts I'd like to leave with you is I like the clean, attractive design of the layout of this machine. Of all the machines I have, this one has the fewest loose cables just laying around, and that's really attributed to the cable management system. If I had this power pack on the other side of the machine, it would just be one bundled cable going off to the side. And that really makes me feel great when I'm working on a project and I don't have all these loose cables and things laying all over my work area. This laser machine, I didn't mention it before, but it does offer a 400 by 400 millimeter work area, which is the equivalent to about 16 inches by 16 inches. That seems to be the standard on machine sizes in the regular configuration. The current price of this machine is $529. There's currently a sale going on for $429, making it not the cheapest, but also not the most expensive machine in this class. So I think this is a really attractive price point with all of the features and safety features included on this machine. There's also additional great pricing, as I mentioned, when this is bundled with an air assist kit or a rotary unit. And in my opinion, in the back of my head, I kind of tell myself that Jiccoda is where value and performance meet at a competitive price. So this is a great little machine. I can't wait to dig into more projects with this. I hope that you like this video. If you found use and entertainment out of this video, please like, subscribe, or ring that notification bell. Doing any number of those things really helps this channel out, and it helps connect content like this with great viewers like you. Until next time, learn, create, and share.